been adamant that it was mono mono. But again, the more that I am, for the lack of a better word, forced to see the adjustments that need to be made, I would say that how it is that one conceptualizes relationships altogether would have to change. And so that there is no such thing as you saying marriage in one person or marriage with two persons necessarily, unless you find that, again, the energy mindset matches as such. I think what you will be looking at is interrelationships. But I don't think in and with those interrelationships you can try to put them within the box of marriage, even if it's polygamous. Then it's not marriage as commonly conceptualized. I think you have interrelationships, and when you have interrelationships, they come and they go. But that if you're going to try to place them again in that context of marriage, whether it's mono or poly, you're still going to run into the issue because there's that expectation that you stay. I do. Let me be honest as it relates to, and I know this will come off different because I don't think you've ever had a conversation between a man and a woman, or women having the conversation about polygamy, unless it's been passed on to her from men. Because I think if a woman in her uh, authentic consciousness talking about the issue of polygamy, what she would communicate is that, and this is just being honest, don't take it negatively. At some point in time, I think women get to the point where, or they should get to the point, I'll be bold enough to say that women should get to the point whereas, I'm not saying that she tires of the man. I think she comes to a maturated state where she understands that what her idea of the man was in her naivete, I won't even put it on age, is not really what it's all about. That what man has done is he's added layers to it in an effort to fortify the construct that he was creating called community. And there may have been a time, I don't know if there ever was a time, but the suggestion is historically there was a time when that worked. But I think what you're dealing with as far as around the world is an implosion and then explosion of a construct folding in and on itself, and so that what was can no longer be. And so, from my own experience, I see relationships as necessary for the continuation of community, not necessarily family per se, but community. And the reason I wouldn't say family is because it branches off into something bigger you call community. So why are you looking at the finite aspect of it or the smallest aspect of it? I think you do that when you're just trying to understand what this is. And in that, then the role of man and woman together, I think, has a very basic and rudimentary function and purpose, and that is to bring into existence the continuation of. But because it's being layered with a lot of romance, then it's these touchy feelings, and you want these feelings to extend into forever. And I think the feelings are more so like Novocaine. I think you construct it in an effort to get yourself from point A to point B. It's almost as if you're forcing yourself to engage, and by doing that, the only way you can succumb to it is to romanticize it. Or else, what really would be your function and purpose for doing it? I don't even think individuals really put a whole lot of thought into marriage. I think it's automatic in the sense that you've been in the construct and it's passed on through your DNA that that's what you should do. But to engage in it without thought is like eating without feeling satisfied. You're going to overeat, you're going to become obese, you're going to become sick, miserable, and then die. And die in this way, I mean, you're not going to even produce anything that's going to lead to anything productive. Because if you look at it, and this is just being really, really honest, we're producing quote unquote children. And I use that word loosely. And I'm not even being facetious. Because if you qualify it in accordance to behavior, these are not children. But that's neither here or there. The point is, producing them for what? What's the function and purpose of producing them at this given point in time? If they're dying in the street, if they're hungry, and if there's so much complaint about them being raised in a single home, why are you still having them? Why have them? And this is not as it relates to the ones that are here, they are here. But I hear individuals saying, specifically women, I want to get married and have children. Why? What is the fulfillment and what is it fulfilling to have them? And what's going to be their function and purpose? Because again, remember, they're fulfilling something. Because see, now I watch the cats around here and I watch the dogs around here, and they'll engage clearly, unconsciously probably, and have them. But those kittens and puppies aren't going to do anything within the construct of family as it relates to a family of cats and a family of dogs to communicate or to develop a community of them. So I doubt if there's any forethought. I think it's automatic. But supposedly with the human being, there's some forethought. Therefore, there's a purpose and function, and for this reason we're doing it, and so therefore this is the end that we're moving towards. So what is the purpose of having them? Because if you can determine what's the function and purpose of having them, I think you can get to, okay, what's your function and purpose in relating to each other and being with each other, and for what? And I don't know that we deal with that at all. I think what has been forced down our mindset, so to speak, is what it is that Caucasians have given us. And when you look at what they have to give us, straight madness. How does the Caucasian man tell you what a household is, what a marriage is, and what a relationship is to be when he imprisoned people, raped men and women, therefore unfaithful to his wife all the time? So at what point in time did he come across this? Idealism, that is. Did he go on a mountain like Moses and get it? Because in history, you've never seen him practice it. He abused his woman, he abused his children, till they both were suffering early deaths. No, seriously, look at the history. Look at the history. He killed his children, he abused his children. Look at the history of European culture. And I'm not even talking about Greece, whereas it was man on man, boy on man, man on boy love. I'm talking about beyond that, when you have come into existence the being that calls himself the Caucasian. and you look at his abuse of women and children. They were worked like cattle to the point that neither one of them lived long. And so, at what point in time in history, because after the working them like cattle, and he imprisoned indigenous people now classified as African American, he was raping the imprisoned woman, he was raping the imprisoned man. So, you would call that cheating if you wanted to speak on it lightly. So, at what point in time in his history of relating to women, his so called woman, or women in general, did he practice this idealism that he's communicating to others? You won't find it in his history. Did one mean that one was having intercourse with that person? And here is why I would suggest that we go back, comb through, and ask those questions. Because in some sects, I remember, I want to say it's the Queen of Fua, when she had the temple in New York. The women would refer to each other as wives, but they were not lesbians. What they were communicating was more so an emotional role that one would be playing to the other. Now keep in mind, because the terms that we have for wife was not that term amongst indigenous people. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying even the concept, the term of husband and wife is coming from Caucasians. I'm saying monogamy, the concept, the terminology that is, that marriage, the terminology comes from Caucasians. And I'm not saying that we did not have unions. I'm saying that our chance to say that how we determine the unions, how long the unions, the function, the purpose of the union, would not translate into what Caucasians are giving us now. Simply because nothing could, simply because it's coming from them. And that's not being facetious, that's just the reality of it. We will say that to speak on our experience with them correctly, it's an issue of fighting a war, being kidnapped, and imprisoned. They call it enslavement, and they equate it to what it was that was occurring in Africa and amongst indigenous people, which would have been servitude or indentured servitude. So all I'm saying is that when Caucasians tell the story, the terminology that they use, somehow the reality of the situation is it falls off in translation, it's missed in translation. He answered, when the person answers the summons, you're imprisoned at that moment in time. And so their continuance of it, it is just to really make money off the situation. Every time they continue, they have to add money into an account. And from that account, they paid those individuals who maintain the illusion of that system being about justice. But that person, once he or she answers the summons, once they go to court, you're in prison whether you do one day in jail or not, simply because, as you stated, there's that continuation, simply because the whole mirage is to communicate to you your particular status. And the communication is that, well, you're not free because you don't have the option not to answer. So now if you don't have the option not to answer, guess what? You are not free. You're already in prison. We're just calling you in because we need to update our books, because we need to put some money into this account and we need to pull it from you, is the reality of the situation. You can't be engaged in a war having lost certain fronts on that war, in that war, and not mentally be so lethargic that you don't realize you're still in it until you get pinched a particular way. And then you go, oh, that's pressure. Oh, I'm being oppressed. Well, first of all, you're in prison, so you should always feel that. But again, the miseducation, the being disconnected from our history, will have us in these delusional states as it relates to why it is that you're feeling the pinch. And you're under the impression that it's temporary or that you could just ignore it. I heard someone say, well, now you can just ignore white people and that won't even be part of your reality. Are you serious? Are you serious? You know, yes, everything is mental, but for you to realize the fullness of the mentalness of it, you have to experience and realize it in the physical. So there's no such thing as separating from the physical. The physical is the mental manifested where you can touch it, taste it, feel it, be pressed by it. And individuals are communicating as if it's something that at some point in time you can detach from, and when you detach from, you'll be free. That's the slave mentality that has just found another avenue to avoid or to run from the reality that has been constructed by the majority in which you're feeling now, because it's called pressure. And we don't want to deal with that because I suppose it makes us sad or feel bad. The reality is you're in it. You do better actually to address it. You living at points in times feel better. Legitimately. For real, for real. But individuals are under the impression that to avoid it, you would feel better. You know, I remember my mother used to say, hey, if you're hungry, go to sleep. You wake up, you'll feel better. No, you wake up angry. You don't. Absolutely. Because by that time, hunger has really set in and is making itself known. So, no, we don't, the communication has been to us that if we deal with it somehow, we're going to mentally, emotionally deconstruct, that we would feel bad. No, you'll feel better because you can go ahead and get this over with. Like mom used to say when you were about to get the whooping, listen, you can plead your case if you want, which is a form of avoidance. Or you go ahead and stand right there and take it, get it over with. Because at some point in time, it would be over with. But not if you're avoiding, you're prolonging, trying to plead with her about how you're not going to do it anymore. You're going to be better, you promise? Yeah. You're prolonging and you're experiencing more pain because now it's emotional and it's psychological. Now you're creating a schism within yourself, a behavior within yourself. And even when the experience is over, you still gonna feel it. Simply because you prolong by avoiding. Face it. Because then it will be over with. It has to be. Because you're gonna deal with it. We don't believe that. We don't know that anymore. So I said, no, don't. You listen to white people, you better flip what they say back. Words. Because whatever they're saying is off. So I don't know what to say about relationships other than we have an understand. Our perception of them are incomplete and insufficient. Relationships have to be like everything else. You have to adjust to the situation you're in and the time you're in. That's no reason not to be respectful. and honest. It just means you're going to have to make an adjustment